up, everyone? Welcome back to another video in this series. We are currently in week 7 of this teaching series, and we're going to be starting in Genesis chapter 12 today. So grab your Bibles and your family, and let's get started. Do you like promises? Like if your dad were to promise you to take you to the zoo next weekend. Or maybe if your grandparents promise you to get you a new bike. For the most part, we all like promises, especially because most promises are happy things most of the time. People try to keep their promises most of the time. But sometimes people just aren't able to keep those promises. Do you know, God makes promises too. You know, he promised Noah that he would save he and his family from a worldwide flood. That's a tremendous promise. But God also made a promise to destroy the rest of the wicked world because they did not love and trust in God. Whether happy promises or sad promises, one thing is for certain. God always keeps his promises. But what about a promise that seems impossible? Something that seems too hard to do. Does God still keep those kind of promises as well? Absolutely, he does. After the flood, Noah and his family grew bigger and bigger until the earth was filling with people again. And out of all these people, God made a special promise to a man named Abram. We read about this in Genesis chapter 12, starting in verse 1. Now the Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing." So Abram went, as the Lord had told him. So what was God's promise to Abram? God promised him that he would be a great nation. What an incredible, tremendous promise. Like Abel and Noah before him, Abram trusted God and said, "God, I believe you, God. I'm going to trust you. I'm going to do what you say." So without making any fuss about it or asking too many questions, Abram and his family obeyed God. They packed up everything and went on their way. So they traveled and traveled until God led them to their new home. Along the way, God blessed Abram and his family. Abram was very wealthy. He had a lot of livestock and animals. Everything was going great. But something was still missing. Something very important was still missing, especially if Abram was going to have such a great nation as God promised. You see, to become a great nation, Abram and his wife Sarai, they had to have children. I mean, they at least had to have a child in order to have this great nation. But they had none, not even one. Abram became concerned about this, so he went to God and asked him, and God listened to him. So one night, on a dark, starry night, God took Abram outside and said this to him: "Look toward heaven and number the stars if you're able to number them." And they said to him, "So shall your offspring be." Now in Abram's time, there were no city lights blocking out the starlight. So Abram could see thousands and thousands of stars. In fact, way too many to even begin to count. That would be the size of this nation that God had promised to Abram. His wife Sarai would be the mother of this great nation. And she would have a baby. God even changed their names to show them that he would keep his promise. From that point on, they became known as Abraham and Sarah. Well, as the years went on, Abraham and Sarah, they celebrated another birthday after another birthday. But there was still no baby. There was no offspring. And this wasn't a problem until they had got to a point in their lives where they had celebrated so many birthdays that it was impossible for them to now have children. I mean, at this point in their lives, Abraham is now 100 years old and Sarah is 90 years old. Way too old to be having a baby. But remember, who made this promise to them? God did. And is anything too hard for God? No. God is almighty. He's all-powerful, so there is nothing that is too hard for him. Even though it was humanly possible for Sarah to have a baby at her age, Nothing is impossible with our God. God kept his promise, and he gave Abraham and Sarah a baby boy whom they named Isaac. Isaac was just the beginning of the great nation that God would go on to make, just as he promised he would do. Our memory verse for this week is found in Luke chapter 18, verse 27, which says this: "What is impossible with man is possible with God." Not only was this promise an exciting time for Abraham and Sarah, but it's exciting for us as well. God would bless the whole earth, including you and me, through this promise to Abraham. God would later bless the world with another impossible promise. What was it? Thousands of years after Isaac, another impossible baby was to be born. The greatest, most special baby of all time. God's greatest promise ever. And we're going to talk all about that next time. And so hopefully you plan on joining us. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.